happening?
Sir, Hulk's blood is attacking Dracula's blood.
I think I figured out why Marvel keeps delaying the Blade project. It looks like they might be planning a solo Dracula movie first. There are a few clues that point in this direction, but the biggest hint is the constant pushback on Blade's production. So let's break down everything we know about Marvel's potential Dracula solo project in the MCU. For those who aren't familiar with Dracula's history in Marvel Comics, here's a quick rundown. The Marvel version of Dracula first appeared in The Tomb of Dracula #1 in April 1972, created by Gerry Conway and Gene Colan, with Marv Wolfman later joining as a co-writer. Before that, a different take on Dracula had popped up in Suspense #7 back in 1951, when Marvel was still known as Atlas Comics. At the time, the Comics Code Authority had strict rules against vampire stories, but that changed in 1971, allowing Marvel to introduce Dracula shortly after Morbius the Living Vampire made his debut in The Amazing Spider-Man. Originally, The Tomb of Dracula was kept separate from the rest of the Marvel Universe, with Marv Wolfman explaining that he wanted to focus on horror elements without worrying about superheroes. But eventually, the temptation for crossovers was too strong, and Dracula ended up facing off against Spider-Man in Giant-Size Spider-Man #1 in 1974. Marvel even published a comic adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula novel in Marvel Classic Comics #9 in 1977. Over the years, Dracula's story took some wild turns. He was supposedly wiped out, along with all vampires, by the mystical Montesi formula in Doctor Strange. But of course, that didn't last. He made a comeback in the Tomb of Dracula miniseries under Marvel's Epic Comics imprint in 1991, and showed up in Night Stalkers and Blade comics in the 90s. He clashed with major Marvel characters, including Apocalypse in X-Men Apocalypse vs. Dracula and Doctor Doom in Captain Britain and MI-13. More recently, he played a major role in the 2010 X-Men storyline Curse of the Mutants. Marvel's version of Dracula has had a long and chaotic history, and with rumors of a solo MCU project, it looks like he's about to step into the spotlight once again. And now you know that. Let's talk about how Dracula's potential solo movie in the MCU could introduce a variety of Marvel characters who have had significant interactions with him in the comics. Given the hints Marvel has dropped and the broader supernatural elements they've been building, several key figures stand out as likely candidates for the film. One of the most obvious choices is Blade, who has been delayed multiple times but remains a major player in the MCU's future. In the comics, Blade and Dracula have a long and bitter rivalry, with the Daywalker's entire mission revolving around hunting vampires, Dracula being the most powerful of them all. With Blade still in development, a Dracula movie could set the stage for their inevitable showdown, possibly establishing Dracula as the ruler of Marvel's vampire world before Blade steps in to challenge him. Another strong contender is Hannibal King, a vampire detective who has frequently appeared in stories involving both Blade and Dracula. Unlike most vampires, Hannibal refuses to drink human blood, making him more of an anti-hero than a villain. He could serve as an ally to whoever opposes Dracula in the film, or act as a reluctant informant, caught between his own nature and his moral code. Marvel could also introduce Lilith, Dracula's daughter in the comics. She's one of the few vampires powerful enough to stand against him, driven by a deep hatred for her father. If Marvel wants to add some family drama to the film, Lilith could be a key antagonist, potentially setting up a multi-film arc where she tries to overthrow Dracula. A more unexpected but possible inclusion is Doctor Strange, who has fought Dracula multiple times, even using the Montesi formula to wipe out all vampires at one point. Given Strange's history with supernatural threats and Marvel's growing focus on darker, mystical storytelling, he could play a small but crucial role, perhaps helping Blade or another hero find a way to defeat Dracula. One particularly intriguing possibility is Wonder Man, who is already confirmed to be getting his own Disney Plus series. While not traditionally linked to Dracula, the MCU version of Simon Williams could have connections to the supernatural. In the comics, Wonder Man has been tied to Baron Zemo's experiments, and with Marvel expanding its horror elements, there's a chance they could link his resurrection abilities to something Dracula-related. Dracula's presence in the Wonder Man series could be teased through hints at vampiric activity or even a direct confrontation if Marvel is looking for unexpected crossovers. Marvel has also laid the groundwork for the Midnight Suns, a supernatural team that includes Blade, Morbius, Ghost Rider, and other dark heroes. A Dracula movie could introduce key figures like Jack Russell, who has already appeared in the Disney Plus special Werewolf by Night, or Elsa Bloodstone, a monster hunter who would fit perfectly into a vampire-focused storyline. If Marvel is building toward a Midnight Suns project, then Dracula could be the primary villain they unite against. Lastly, there's Baron Blood, a Nazi vampire who has clashed with both Dracula and Captain America. While his World War II background might not be a focus, his inclusion could expand the lore of vampires in the MCU, showing how Dracula's influence has spread throughout history. With all these possibilities, a Dracula solo film wouldn't just be about him, it would be a gateway to the supernatural side of the MCU, setting up future conflicts and introducing a darker, more horror-inspired corner of the franchise. A solo Dracula movie could take an unexpected approach by positioning Dracula as a reluctant hero while casting Blade as the antagonist, at least from Dracula's perspective. This shift in dynamic would introduce a fresh narrative to the MCU, one that hasn't been explored in previous Marvel films. Instead of portraying Dracula purely as an evil force, the film could show his growing realization that wiping out humanity isn't the solution, a theme Marvel has touched upon in the comics, particularly in Blood Hunt. In Blood Hunt, Marvel reveals that the vampire world is escalating into an all-out war, led by a secretive figure orchestrating violent attacks on humans. While Dracula has traditionally been depicted as the ruler of vampires, he isn't always the mastermind behind the worst atrocities committed by his kind. In fact, he has at times attempted to control the chaos rather than embrace it. In the Captain Britain and MI-13 storylines, Dracula initially planned a full-scale invasion of Earth, but later reconsidered his role when faced with the potential destruction of both human and vampire civilizations. This theme could carry over into the MCU, with Dracula realizing that unchecked vampiric expansion would only lead to a disastrous war with humanity. This is where Blade enters the picture, not as a mindless villain, but as someone who sees Dracula's change of heart as a deception. Blade, having spent his life hunting vampires, would never trust Dracula, no matter how much he claimed to have turned over a new leaf. The story could explore a moral dilemma. If Blade believes that exterminating all vampires is the only way to protect humanity, then from his point of view, Dracula's attempt to control the vampire population is merely another ploy for power. This would set up a gripping ideological battle where both characters believe they are doing what's right. A crucial turning point could come from Dracula aligning himself with humanity against a greater threat. In several comics, including Doctor Strange, the Montesi Formula, and Avengers Assemble, Dracula has teamed up with heroes to combat rogue vampire factions or supernatural threats beyond his control. The film could introduce a new villain, perhaps a vampire cult leader who seeks to push humanity to extinction, believing that vampires should rule the earth. This antagonist could be someone like Varney, the ancient vampire lord who predates Dracula and has appeared in multiple Marvel storylines. If Varney leads a genocidal vampire uprising, Dracula might be forced to defend humanity, proving that his interests now align with theirs. The story would question traditional hero-villain dynamics, portraying Dracula as an anti-hero rather than a pure monster. He wouldn't be a saint, he's still a predator and a ruler of darkness, but he would recognize that the survival of both species requires balance. Blade, however, wouldn't see it that way. This could set up an intense philosophical battle between the two, where the lines between hero and villain blur, creating a unique, morally complex storyline unlike anything the MCU has done before. And that's a wrap for today's video. If you want to stay up to date with all the latest movie and series news, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a big thumbs up. I'll be back soon with more updates on which Inhuman and X-Men movie the MCU will kick off the mutant saga with. Plus, the latest on some of your favorite series and films. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned. I'll see you in our next video.